Darby, who recently had quite a bit of success. Pro Tour Dominaria certainly showed that he knows his way around this format.
Yes.
Taking away the win, taking away the trophy. He's currently the champion of the Pro Tour.
Oh, and if we look at this, he has his pick between a Surveyor, an Eviscerate, and a Slimefoot.
These first packs have been so powerful and they've degraded so quickly, is what I've been noticing. Each of these packs really seems to be sitting on just a couple of those really powerful cards, at least in the pack one of all three of these.
Yeah, and there are two people in between Wyatt and Seth. We just watched Seth draft, and Wyatt is passing to somebody who's passing to somebody who's passing to Seth.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of get to see like every corner of this draft table.
Notably, Wyatt Darby, when he was at Pro Tour Dominaria, 6-0 in the draft portion. Did not drop any matches, so he is familiar with this format. He's ready to play it.
And it gets things started off right away with almost a build-around. A card that's powerful if you can cast it in any deck, but when you have the cards to go with it, it can just be incredible, and that's Slimefoot the Stowaway.
Grow from the Ashes, a powerful green card that's going to enable him to do some splashing. 3 mana to grab a land, or 5 mana to grab 2. Notably, they also do enter the battlefield untapped.
Which comes up pretty often.
Yeah, on more than one occasion, I've done it for 5 mana and then followed up with a 2-drop as, like a 1/3, something like that. Grow from the Ashes strikes me as a good pick, but also Blessed Light, a very powerful card, though we've seen enough of these ones kind of making their way to the other drafters that Grow from the Ashes strikes me as the pick, and that is going to be the case.
Yeah, Wyatt already, the world is fingertips in terms of the picks that he's taken, can kind of pick what he wants to here. Yeah,
gotta be happy, especially because doing both of these options enables him for other splashes. If at least Grow from the Ashes, strikes me as that kind of card, to where as he starts really just finding whatever card he wants to make a play with, he can move into it. Fungal Infection as well as Yavimaya Sappered. I always think that card's going to be a Shepherd.
Yeah, it's easy to accidentally say Shepherd when you read that card, because that Sappered kind of looks like Shepherd.
Right.
So I didn't really realize this, but Maria pointed it out to me a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Those little things are baby sapperlings that are dancing. They're doing a bobbing dance.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm loving this card all the more suddenly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This card goes up, 3 Q points?
Oh, definitely.
They're arbitrary, so, they're worth something. Baloth Gorger available, as well as Arvad the Cursed. Baloth Gorger continues to be on color. We've seen him really be in green, a little bit of black with that turn pack 1, pick 1. Slimefoot the Stowaway. Seems to be keeping an eye on maybe moving into maybe a double splash with this Arvad the Cursed.
Yeah, and he has the Slimefoot for black already. Arvad, a very powerful card.
That's going to be the take. So passing the Baloth Gorger, which is a phenomenal common, but going with that legendary uncommon, Death Touch and Lifelink on a 3/3, and also gives a pretty impressive boost to any other legendary creatures that you end up with.
Yeah, Arvad is a really good card. People who have played against it know that, when your opponent has 2 legends in play and they cast that card, the game ends real fast. Death Touch and Lifelink also, it makes the card very good at racing against flyers. It means that it can trade up against the big fatty boom booms that green is going to offer you.
He's a team player.
Yes.
He's a team player. All right, so it's going to be the Mesa Unicorn, starting to really develop the 3-color option of this one. We've got a couple of white cards, we've got a couple of black cards, a lot of green cards.
Yeah, and Abzan is a decent 3-color combination here. This is an interesting pick here. He's got the Reproach, he's got the Deathbloom Thallid. Even Skinwitch is, a consideration here, and even Thorn Elemental, considering how his deck is playing out. I imagine Deathbloom Thallid is just better than the other cards, so I think that's the card he's going to end up taking. Reproach is really the other consideration.
That one does work out really nicely along with some of the cards that he's already drafted. You get a small bit of synergy with that Slimefoot the Stowaway as well, because of his triggered ability whenever you lose one of those Sapperlings. Mm-hmm. Also works out quite nicely with the Yavimaya Sappered.
Yeah, and Deathbloom Thallid, it's important to note, however, is a card that if you're playing black, you want that card in your deck. It's just a powerful card.
Right.
But it just happens to be best alongside the Sapperling synergies.
Ancient Animus, the take here for Wyatt Darby. A little bit of the green side of the removal spells.
Yeah, and this is a card that, these 2-mana fight cards have been pretty good over the last few years. In this set, they are not quite as good as they have been. However, in Wyatt's deck, Ancient Animus is quite strong. Remember, he has Arvad and Slimefoot already.
Stronghold Confessor. This is a card that we saw at the end of Cess Draft. Very commonly, it's going to be a 4-mana 3/3 with Menace. You can kick it for that 3 mana for 2 additional +1/+1 counters. Really the face value of this card, a 1-mana 1/1, less desirable.
Yeah, the majority of the time you're casting Stronghold Confessor, it's as a 3/3.
Krosan Druid in this pack alongside Gaia's Blessing, also a Voltaic Servant. That card gains quite a bit of life if you can end up paying for that kicker. 10 life in a format like this could be substantial.
Yeah, and that 10 life is really important when you're playing against flyers. When you're a green-black deck or different varieties of green decks, a lot of the time you find yourself in a situation where you don't really have much of an air force and you don't have a ton of removal. So a card like Krosan Druid can put you in the position where you're able to soak up another 2 hits in the air while you win the game on the ground.
Divest, another card that he's going to pick up there. And there's that Joda Archmage eternally circling this table so far. Alongside Damping Sphere, and it's going to be an Excavation Elephant.
An Uffalump.
Uffalump.
Yeah.
We see Knight of New Medalia, Feral Abomination, Llanowar Envoy. Let's take the 5/5 with Death Touch.
Yeah, those are 3 very reasonable playables as the last 3 cards left in that pack.
For 6 mana, it's always interesting when you see Death Touch on some of these larger creatures because usually it's functional anyway.
Yeah.
Just how many other 6/6s are you attacking into with your Feral Abomination and a Rat Colony and a Sparring Construct? Sparring Construct, a reasonable 1-mana 1/1 that at least has got some use in the late game when it ends up dying. Could pair up nicely if there's going to be any sacrifice effects. We did see that Thallid Omnivore moving around the table in pack 2.
Yeah, I don't know. I could have 5 Thallid Omnivores in my deck and I wouldn't play a Sparring Construct for what it's worth.
Well, why would you? You've got 5 Thallid Omnivores. What more do you need? So, pack 1 here comes away with a couple of powerful legendaries, comes up with quite a variety of cards, but really kind of centered around these Abzan colors. How are you feeling about it?
I like where he's at. I like his deck after pack 1 more than I like Seth's, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think the Arvad turned out to be quite a nice pickup. I think that the Grow from the Ashes plan is very real. I think the sapling plan is very real. And he really can choose which lane he wants to go in without really messing with his color requirements much. Like right now, he's put together 3 different directions that he can go in, and he has enough playables in all of those directions to be on track at this stage of the draft. So, impressive stuff from Wyatt here.
He didn't win Pro Tour Dominaria for nothing.
Yeah, 6-0'd the draft portion. It's pretty good.
So as he's heading into pack 2, is there anything that seemed a little bit lacking? We haven't seen a whole lot of removal. We saw him pass a Gideon's Reproach at one point. Seth ended up getting a massive boost in his removal spells in that pack 2. Is Wyatt Darby going to be looking a little bit higher priority for that? At what point do you start prioritizing the removal spells? Is that in that pack 2, pack 3, if you've been shy on them as of yet?
So I think you want to prioritize them very high right from the get-go.
Okay.
Right out of the gate in pack 1. The cards that you're going to be taking over them are things like Slimefoot, things that have the ability to win the game kind of by themselves, things like Sarah Angel, Slimefoot, big rares. And these are cards that, especially when they're on color, you just can't bring yourself to pass them.
Sure.
So, removal spells really in this format are very high priority, as they often are in Limited, but more so in this format than in more recent ones. And the only cards you're taking over removal are, the key, pillar cards, the super powerful bombs, and then you just want to be taking removal. This is a format that rewards you for being able to interact.
Fantastic. And, of course, the Dominaria draft, one that you've been enjoying quite a bit. As we're waiting for this pack 2, tell me a little bit about what makes this Dominaria draft experience such a phenomenal one for you.
So I love that the draft format has slowed down. I think that, we've had defensive 2-drops that just were dead cards in the late game for too many sets in a row. And this deck giving us Calico Skin Witch, giving us Gitu Chronicler, giving us high toughness creatures in relation to power at every casting cost. It's really created a format where people are able to flesh out different strategies. And aggro strategies aren't necessarily bad, but they're not the only thing you can do. And I really like that the full gamut of Magic strategies is at play when you're doing a Dominaria draft.
Yeah, as I was studying up on this format in preparation for this event, normally you put me at a draft table, and I'm very happily forcing a mono red deck almost every time. And like you said, the aggressive decks were significantly more hindered in this one, and it was actually a big motivation for me to really start branching out of it. I've been going into a lot of different archetypes, really enjoying them. My draft experience has I've broadened my horizons because of this set, and really a lot of it is that those aggressive decks just don't have the same inherent viability in my mind.
Yeah, and they're certainly viable. It's just that I think in the most recent draft formats, they've been the only thing that really was viable, as opposed to this draft format where it's just one of many different things that you can choose to do.
Oh, yeah. So Pack 2 going to be coming on up here for Wyatt, Darby. Pack 1, just to give a little bit of a recap, started off with Slimefoot the Stowaway, followed up with Grow from the Ashes. Since then, we've seen Arvad the Cursed to really start moving into the direction of white. So some powerful cards in the Abzan realm, and we're probably going to see him try and develop that a little bit.
Yeah, and here some options. I saw the Tashar at the back of the pack, but I also saw Seal Away. And I imagine he's going to be taking Seal Away over the rare here. You
were just talking about how much you have to prioritize removal. Fungal Infection, another one of those that has got some light synergistic applications as well. But Seal Away, the far more powerful removal spell.
Yeah, for just 2 mana, you're dealing with any threat your opponent has, and you're exiling it too. This card is just awesome.
Takes out pretty much all but 3 cards in the format: Sarah Angel, Untumkavu, and Forebear's Blade.
Yeah.
That's about all that I can think of that it doesn't actually handle pretty cleanly.
Yeah, and just an exceptional card.
So a good way to kick things off, really starting to develop that white splash that we saw early on. Shivan Fire, Wizard's Retort, Memorial to Folly, a card that he's already moving towards the front of the pack. Not a whole lot that's really in his colors. Lands in this set, we've seen some draft sets in which the lands are taken really highly. Very often it's those multicolored sets. The Memorials in this set, do you find them to be a pretty high valuable pick?
Yes, I do. I think the blue one is especially strong. I think Memorial to Folly, which he sees here, is a very reasonable card. Card he definitely wants one of in his deck.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of that, too, entering the battlefield tapped just isn't as much of a cost in this slower format as it would be in some others.
Yeah, and, just being able to cash in your land for, a card of your choice, essentially, in the later stages of the game is really strong.
So we've got a Fungal Infection in this pack, a Feral Abomination, quite a few blue cards. Might be looking at that one. There's also an Adamant Will. There's a Llanowar Envoy. That's about it as far as on colors, unless he wants to really move towards that Tragic Poet.
Yeah, I do like Fungal Infection as a card. I know that a lot of different people's rating of this card is very different than mine. I think this card is a pretty powerful card, and he's going to agree and go ahead and take that there.
I heard one person once describe that Fungal Infection is at its most powerful the first time that you cast it in the match, because from that point forward, they know it's somewhere in there, and they're not going to be leaving themselves wide open to it to the same degree.
That's absolutely true, and I think the card is also more powerful in this draft than it might be in other drafts. Not the format, but this particular draft that we're watching right now, because we've seen so many Gliders and Knight of Nubenalias and even Llanowar Elves going around the table. I mean, Fungal Infection is going to have a lot of targets that it can outright kill without even some sort of combat.
So Whisperblood Liturgist is going to be the take here, and what you're saying is actually a pretty interesting aspect of when you're drafting within Pod as opposed to, like we were talking earlier, within League. Drafting with the consideration of what you'll be playing against, because you're looking at what you're going to be playing against. Every card that you pass is a card that you're going to face. And drafting with that consideration in mind, you're going to see these cards later, keeping this presence of mind towards how many X1s are in the format? Does this make my Fungal Infection a better card? Does it make it a worse card? Does it make it main deckable? Is a really interesting aspect of what you get from this experience.
And now, so last pick, Wyatt had taken a Whisper, which combos very nicely with his sapling theme and the powerful legends he has. Here he gets to take another Grow from the Ashes, which means that he can happily be this 3-color deck. And even if he has too many lands to work with, he has mana sinks in the form of cards like Slimefoot.
This pack definitely taken a little bit of a negative turn. A lot of red cards, couple of blue. There's a Chainer's Torment if he wants access to that one.
If things are going to dry up, at the end of Pack 2 is the place where you want them to dry up. And, Wyatt was a little bit frustrated with himself that he had to pass as many Shivan Fires as he has. I believe that was the third one that he saw when he saw it a few packs ago, and we saw him tapping at it a bit. Man, I wish I could take the Shivan Fire.
Primordial Worm in the pack. It is just a giant creature. Also, some options with Academy Drake. 2 Grow from the Ashes does enable quite a few. Is there a world in which Wyatt Darby starts moving into possibly a splash beyond his primary 3 colors?
He has the option to if he wants to. With double Grow from the Ashes, he can really do what he wants to. Although, hate drafting that Academy Drake, I like that, even if it's just a hate draft. He hasn't seen much in the way of blue cards. That pack was probably stacked in the way of blue.
He's taking a look at this Primordial's Glorious Rebirth, wondering maybe can he make it happen. I don't think it's going to be the case.
Yeah, he may pass on that one.
Otherwise, a Voltaic Servant coming down. Not going to be doing an enormous amount, but you were talking earlier about how some of these, 2-mana defensive creatures, it is a 2-mana 1/3 at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's a card you're going to win to sideboard against your more aggressive opponents. It's also a card that will, drastically increase the value of a card like Traxos if you open it in the 3rd pack.
We've got Guardians of Koilos. We've also got Llanowar Envoy, Final Parting as some of the on-color options. This one, just going to take that Guardian of Koilos. We've seen a lot of those ones start to get picked up towards the end of the packs. Quite a few of those ones floating around in this draft.
Yeah, a 4/4 for 5 mana is, respectable. And then the fact that this table has seen multiple deep freezes going around makes the card even better.
Great point, because if they take down one of your legendary creatures with that, you can just return it to your hand, recast it later, and really you've nullified that enchantment.
Yeah.
Frenzied Rage, a pickup. Feral Abomination, it's on color. It's a big creature. He's done it before. He'll do it again.
Yeah, well, we've seen these Grow from the Ashes.
He can splash anything now. 2 Grow from the Ashes, that's right where you want to be. Fire Elemental, Gift of Growth, and board the Weatherlight. How do you feel about Gift of Growth? Combat tricks in this format. It does, I like to say, oh dear, anytime that I see this card get cast. Only recently really noticed what the art was, and I've been saying it since. But does that card have a high bit of value for you, or is it something that is usually the 23rd card at that?
So I'm not a big fan of pump spells in this format. I think the inexpensive instant speed removal is good enough that you get punished really hard for them sometimes. But I think that taking cards like that later on in your earlier packs is often wise because it gives you an escape hatch. If the more controlling your deck you're trying to put together doesn't work out, you can just play the pile of 2-drops that you have left over with a bunch of pump spells, and that might be good enough to get you 2 match wins.
All right, and of course the last pick we saw a foil Memorial to War.
That's the worst of the Memorials.
It's the worst of the Memorials. There's a reason there's a foil made it all the way to the round. So, end of pack 2, able to pick up quite a few cards on color. Really, only, 2 or 3 that were off color. How are we feeling for Wyatt Darby in this draft?
I feel pretty good. I mean, I don't have much of a top end right here. I would appreciate having more in the way of mana sinks, though I do have, the kicker of my Krosan Druid. I do have Memorial to Folly. I guess I do have Slimefoot. So he's got a decent amount of mana sinking going on. I think that I'd be happy with this deck.
Okay.
I think he would like to have more game against flyers is a big thing for him right now.
Yeah, and you were talking about his top end. A large portion of his top end right now is these Feral Abominations, which do a suitable job. of being
Yeah,
a
you're
large
not
creature.
thrilled with them.
Right. You know, they're a common. They're 6 mana for a 5/5. They'll attack and block just fine, but they also don't do the best against any opposing, you know, smaller 1/1s, anything like that. They're not going to be fantastic creatures that really overtake the board.
Yeah. I think if he's able to get some type of, you know, big flyer, I think that, you know, a card that he would love to open in pack 3. I know this is ambitious, but, you know, Demon Lord Bells and Lock would be a really, really nice one for his deck. Multani would be a really nice one. Basically, he wants powerful cards that interact well against opposing flyers, because right now the only way he's going to interact with opposing flyers is Fungal Infection and Seal Away. Like, if his opponent plays a Sarah Angel, that thing is in play attacking him every turn for the remainder of the game.
So we're calling the shot that it's going to be Demon Lord Bells and Lock.
That's
the call shot?
That would be what I would like to see out of this
All
pack.
right. Multani,
I
of
think
course.
he would like to see Multani. I think he'd be happy to see either one, to be honest.
Multani's got reach, notably.
Yes,
which
exactly.
is phenomenal.
The reach on that card, maybe the best reach has ever been on a card. I'm not even kidding.
It doesn't often die.
Yeah.
You know, we see a lot of these cards with reach to where most commonly you'll see it on something like a giant spider or anything like that, to where even if it's not dying, it's very rarely killing the opposing creature. They tend to be sort of like this defensive perimeter. But Multani pretty much just beats most of these cards straight up in combat. So, pack 3 going to be working its way towards us. This is going to be the third and, I believe, final draft that we did record to be able to then move into the matches. So we did previously see Sam Black, and then we also saw Seth Manfield. Seth Manfield went into that black-white deck that we actually just saw before this. And now we see Wyatt Darby really moving into sort of an Abzan territory, maybe, you know, base green, and then taking whatever Seth didn't take as far as the black and white. The called shot gets it, Demon Lord Bells and Lock.
Pointing into the outfields. I swear I didn't know that for what it's worth.
Oh, my goodness. Wyatt Darby is going to come back and talk to you later about why didn't you call Multani?
Yeah.
Demon Lord Bells and Lock. That's a pretty good way to lead into pack 3. Look at the called shot. We should do this more often.
Oh, man.
Woo.
I'm good at calling shots.
I mean, you play basketball, right? There we go.
So, 6/6 flying trample that replaces itself in your hand, sometimes draws you more than one card.
All right.
It's a card you're happy to have, especially when you have 2 copies of Grow from the Ashes. You can ramp into it.
I'm going to remember that one for a while. All right. That's a nice way to end this. We see Voltaic Servant, Valid Omnivore, Knight of Malice, one of these first striking creatures, a Llanowar Elves. Though I do think we saw that Llanowar Elves make its way around a little bit later, but this is a pretty solid way to get into pack 3.
Yeah, and you see Knight of Malice there on your screen. That is definitely my pick here. I think that, you know, especially when in pod, that card, if you're not a white-based deck, has a greater than 50% chance of being turned on, or at least 50% chance of being turned on. That means it's a 3-power first striker for 2 mana that can't be hit by cards like Blessed Light. I mean, just
even in his own deck, he has the capacity to actually really turn that one into the 3/2.
Yeah. And he can just turn it on with his own spells.
Arvad the Cursed, ramping it up. How much do you want to see that be an 8/8 Demon Lord Bells and Lock because of the Arvad the Cursed? Or is that too greedy?
Oh, I think Demon Lord Bells and Lock is about being greedy.
So Pierce the Sky moving its way to the front. Now, you talked earlier about ways to actually deal with flyers. We saw the Demon Lord Bells and Lock. This might be another option that would likely end up in the sideboard, but...
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him take it. His deck is still, you know, very weak to flyers. Like, sometimes he's not going to draw that Demon Lord. So this Pierce the Sky gives him a really nice sideboard option against people who have a decent amount of flyers. And, you know, depending on how he feels the texture of the table is, he may even want to main deck a card like that.
Really? Yawgmoth's Vial offering in this one. We also, I do believe... Are we taking the Yawgmoth's Vial offering? Oh.
Yeah, he started to count up how many legends he has, and, you know, Demon Lord Bells and Lock, Slimefoot, Arvad. That's enough. We're there.
If you're going to kill a creature and get another creature back, and you've already got one of those, that's a card that's just going to shut the game down. You know, if you can combine Yawgmoth's Vile Offering with any of those powerful legendaries. We see Fungal Infection. That's a card that we did like a little bit earlier. This would be the second one. Taking a look at that Jaya Ballad, but we know that ended up with Seth. And it looks like that's going to be the choice, going for a little bit more of pseudo removal, pseudo combo trick, or combat trick. This does a little bit of everything.
Yeah, a great card. We saw it be incredible against Mono Red earlier today.
When he took down that Beaumont Courier. Oh, it's the card of the day for me.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
And now we find out about why that Spore Crown Thallid was making its way around. Hydra Omnivore, the take over it. How do you feel about that option, going for one that really capitalizes on having one larger creature or a bunch of smaller boosts?
So I think that that speaks volumes for how highly Wyatt values Thallid Omnivore.
We see Spore Swarm. We also see Mammoth Spider, and we're going to take the Spore Swarm. 3 mana, instant speed. Get 3 of those saplings onto the battlefield. We're starting to see really this sort of Abzan sapling deck come into fruition.
Yeah, and now Wyatt's deck really came together as well as it could have, given the picks.
And of course, with the Avamaya Saphir, I'm going to assume that Wyatt and the rest of his cards are going to be kind of bobbing their way into the match. Wyatt's got to